When the soul is overwhelmed by the injustice of the world, it begins to tremble, not from weakness, but because it has touched the threshold of something deeper. That trembling is not to be dismissed. It is not a flaw in your being. It is a signal, a sacred knock at the door of your inner world. And the question is not whether the world is fair, for the world has never promised fairness, but whether the soul can endure, grow, and become whole. Despite it, many of you have come here searching for peace. But what if I told you that peace is not found in the absence of conflict, but in the ability to hold the chaos without becoming it? What if calm was not the result of a tranquil life, but the product of a well-integrated psyche? You do not need the world to be fair in order to be still within yourself. In fact, it is often in the unfairness, in the deep wounds and betrayals, that your most sacred work begins. I have spent my life among dreams, symbols, and shadows. And I can tell you this with certainty: the path to serenity does not lie on the surface of things. It is found in the depths, in the very core of your unconscious. Most people seek control in the outer world when they feel anxiety, anger, or confusion. But control is a poor substitute for consciousness. Control might give you the illusion of power, but consciousness gives you the capacity to bear the unbearable without crumbling. When life feels unjust, and it often does, it is your first instinct to react. But I urge you to pause, not because you should be passive, but because you must become aware. What part of you has been touched by this injustice? What archetype is awakening within you? Is it the victim, the warrior, the orphan child, the martyr? All of these live inside you. And they are not to be feared. They are to be known, because until you recognize their voices, they will pull you like invisible strings, causing you to weep, rage, collapse, or numb yourself without understanding why. You see, when a child experiences unfairness, he cries. When a conscious adult experiences unfairness, he listens to the cry. Beneath the cry, he says, "What part of my soul is being exposed? What ancient grief have I buried that this new event is now resurrecting life?" You will find repeats itself not because it is cruel, but because it is symbolic. Every injustice is a metaphor, a mirror, a reenactment of some inner fracture that has not yet found its voice. And this is where we begin to speak not of the mind, but of the soul. The soul does not count time as the ego does. For the soul, the past is alive. The childhood abandonment is not behind you, it lives in you. The heartbreak you thought you healed still echoes through your dream life. The moment your teacher humiliated you in school is still embedded in the archetype of your wounded student. It is not that you are weak, it is that you are layered. Staying calm, Zen, is not about repression. It is not about putting on a mask of indifference. It is about entering the symbolic world and making meaning. The moment you say, "This feels like betrayal," you have already begun the work of integration. You have named the pattern. You have connected the outer injustice to the inner story. And that is the great secret. Meaning is what transforms suffering into initiation. Meaning is the fire that burns off the poison of unfairness. and leaves behind gold. But there is a danger, there is always a danger. When you cannot make meaning, you will collapse into neurosis. Neurosis is not a disease. It is the soul's protest against a life devoid of symbolic understanding, anxiety, depression, obsessive thinking. These are the symptoms of a psyche trapped in a world that no longer speaks the language of the archetypes, and so you must learn again how to listen to your dreams, your triggers, your reactions, not as defects, but as symbols. Imagine a man whose wife has left him for another. He sits in despair and says, "This is unfair." And perhaps he's right. But what if I asked him to tell me his dreams, and in them he finds himself in a stormy sea, trying to reach a shore he cannot see. And then I say to him, "Your wife is the sea. She has become the feminine force that draws you into the unconscious." What then? Does he only grieve the woman? Or does he begin to see that she was also the initiator of his deeper journey? You must understand every outer injustice is connected to an inner opportunity. This is not a moral statement. It is a psychological one. You are not asked to forgive because the world is kind. You are asked to forgive because your psyche demands integration. Hatred, if held too long, becomes a poison that seeps into every crevice of your inner architecture. It contaminates your dreams, distorts your relationships, and blinds your vision. Forgiveness, then, is not a favor to the other, it is a purification of your own temple. There is a dream I once heard from a young woman. In it, she was walking through a courtroom where everyone wore masks. She was being judged, but no one would look at her face. She was terrified. When she awoke, she told me, "This is how I feel at work, misunderstood, blamed, unseen." I said to her, "The courtroom is not only your job, it is your inner world. There are parts of you that still wear masks, that still judge yourself without mercy. This is work, to move from projection to reflection, to say not only they were wrong to hurt me, but also why did my soul draw me into this pattern again? This is not self-blame. It is self-retrieval. It is the holy art of shadow work, pulling back the projection you cast onto the world and saying, what part of me have I disowned that is now crying out through this injustice? You see, calm is not given. It is forged, like iron in fire, like clarity in storm, like vision in blindness. It is the result of descending into the chaos and returning with a piece of gold in your hand. And that gold is always the same, the knowledge of yourself. But do not be deceived. This journey is not linear. You will fall again. You will rage again. You will cry out, why me, and feel the world ignore you. And in those moments, the ego will tell you to despair. But I say to you, go deeper, always deeper, because beneath the rage is a wound, and beneath the wound is a longing, and beneath the longing is a light, so ancient, so holy, that it remembers who you were before the world told you to be someone else. This light is not destroyed by injustice. In fact, it is revealed by it. For when life is fair, the soul sleeps. But when life betrays you, the soul awakens. It begins to see. It begins to question. It begins to say, there must be more, and that more is not out there. It is within the self. That great central archetype of wholeness is not born from comfort. It is born from the union of opposites, from the ability to hold both pain and wisdom in the same breath, from the willingness to descend into the underworld of your own psyche and walk among your shadows without fear. You do not become whole by being good. You become whole by being real, by holding all that you are, the sinner and the saint, the victim and aggressor, the child and the elder, in one vast sacred container. This is the alchemy of the soul, and it is here in this crucible. That calm is no longer a technique. It is a state of being. It is not something you perform. It is something you become, like the stillness at the bottom of the ocean, untouched by the storms above. And so, if life feels unfair, I do not ask you to deny it. I ask you to bow before it, not in defeat, but in reverence, for something ancient has been stirred, some forgotten memory, some neglected part of you has been summoned to the surface. And your task is not to silence it. Your task is to listen, to interpret, to embody. You will not find peace by pretending the world is kind. You will find peace by becoming intimate with your own depths. You will stay calm, not because life is easy, but because you have become vast enough to contain it all. There are moments when the outer world delivers such piercing blows that the psyche recoils, not in weakness, but in ancient memory. You see, the unfairness you experience is not merely personal. It taps into the collective. The injustice you feel in this lifetime echoes 100 archetypal betrayals embedded in the unconscious of humanity. And so your pain is more than yours. It is ancestral, mythological, timeless. When you encounter the cruelty of fate, you are not just facing the circumstances of this hour. You are standing in the same river where Prometheus was bound, where Job was tested, where Psyche was abandoned. Do not dismiss your suffering as meaningless. If you can bear it, you will see it has roots deeper than your biography. You are living out a pattern, an ancient motif, a psychic myth, and yet this does not mean you are a puppet of destiny. Quite the opposite. The moment you become aware that you are living an archetypal story, you begin to rewrite it. You begin to step out of the trance of victimhood and into the temple of consciousness. This is what it means to become an individual, not one who separates from humanity, but one who becomes responsible for their own myth. You may ask, but how does this help me stay calm? I say to you, calm is not an anesthetic. It is the byproduct of understanding. Once you grasp the story you are in, you no longer flail. You no longer mistake the storm for chaos. It becomes initiation. You are no longer merely a sufferer. You are a participant in the unfolding of soul. But this work, this deep mythological seeing, requires a shift of perception. You must begin to look at your life not with the eyes of a strategist, but with the eyes of a symbolist. For instance, if your career collapses unexpectedly, the ego screams failure, but the symbolist asks, what structure has crumbled within my psyche? Which inner god has been dethroned? Perhaps it is the god of perfection, or control, or approval, And in its fall, another voice can emerge more authentic, more dangerous, more whole. You must learn to see the psyche not as a machine, but as a sacred drama. Each part of you, every impulse, fear, and dream plays a role. Even your rage has a name. It may be Mars, the warrior, or Loki, the trickster, or Kali, the destroyer. Do not exile these figures, invite them into dialogue. The moment you personify your inner forces, you make them conscious. And the moment you make them conscious, they cease to possess you. There is a dream I once analyzed in which a man wandered through a burned forest. All the trees were blackened, charred. He wept, saying, everything's gone. But then he looked closer and saw tiny green shoots emerging from the soil. I asked him, what has burned in your life recently? He answered, my beliefs, my ambitions, my illusion that I would be spared hardship. I said to him, then this is not death. This is alchemy. Yes, alchemy, the ancient art of transmutation. You do not become serene by escaping the fire. You become serene by staying in it long enough to see what it transforms. In alchemy, there is a stage called nigredo, the blackening. It is a stage of decomposition, dissolution, loss. It feels like ruin, but it is sacred, for only through nigredo can we reach the gold of illumination. And so I tell you, if you are in the dark, do not flee. Stay, watch, wait. Something is being born through the death. Do not rush to be healed. Do not rush to be wise. The psyche unfolds in time like a flower whose bloom cannot be forced. The ego craves quick answers, but the soul requires depth. You must descend slowly, with reverence, into the caverns of your own being. There you will find what you thought you had lost: dignity, clarity, power. But it will not look like what the world calls power. It will be silent, rooted, like a tree whose roots drink from the river beneath the river. Let us speak now of the shadow, the aspect of the psyche that contains all that the ego rejects: your envy, your rage, your cruelty, your despair. Most people repress these parts. They try to be good, and in doing so, they become false. I say to you, calm cannot come from falseness. It comes from wholeness. You must reclaim the orphaned parts of yourself. Invite the shadow to the table. Say to it, what are you protecting me from? You will be surprised to hear its answer. Often, what we call emotional overreaction is not excess, it is echo. It is the voice of the shadow saying, I have waited too long to be seen. Your job is not to banish this voice, but to listen, to ask, what story am I still living out from childhood? What grief have I never named? What unmet need is masquerading as anger? This is the path to depth. And depth leads to calm, for what has been made conscious no longer controls you. It becomes your companion instead of your captor. And so I urge you, if you wish to be calm in an unfair world, do not merely focus on what is happening to you. Ask what is awakening within you. Each betrayal may activate the betrayed child archetype. Each rejection may echo the exiled self, but once you see the pattern, you gain choice. You are no longer at the mercy of fate. You become the author of your own symbolic redemption. The journey, of course, is not solitary. The psyche does not bloom in isolation. It requires the presence of the other, not necessarily a romantic other, but a witnessing other, a friend, a therapist, a stranger who hears your truth without judgment. You cannot integrate what you are still hiding. You must speak, and in speaking, the fragmented parts of you begin to gather. They begin to trust. They begin to return home. One of the most healing dreams I have ever witnessed came from a man plagued by panic attacks. In the dream, he was walking through a dark tunnel, pursued by a wolf. He ran and ran until he collapsed. But instead of devouring him, the wolf sat beside him and licked his wounds. He woke up weeping. I thought the wolf was the threat. He said, but it was my healer. And so it is with the psyche. That which you fear most may be the very force that wishes to restore you. The wolf is instinct. The wolf is wildness. The wolf is the part of you that remembers what your culture taught you to forget. Calm does not come from taming the wolf. It comes from honoring it, from saying, I see you. You are my guardian, not my enemy. This inner alliance is what creates true strength, not the brittle strength of denial, but the supple strength of self-knowledge. You may think, but I cannot face all this alone. And you are right. That is why we must return to the ancient ways, the symbolic, the ritualistic, the imaginal. Modern man has lost his connection to the unconscious. And in doing so, he has lost his resilience. He relies on logic when what he needs is initiation. He seeks order when what he needs is meaning. Rituals, personal, private, or shared, create containers for the soul's descent. Light a candle and speak your grief. Write your anger in a letter you will never send. Bury an object that represents what you are releasing. These are not silly acts. They are psychic movements. They speak to the unconscious in its own language, the language of symbol, of metaphor, of poetry. And the unconscious responds, not always quickly, but always truthfully. And you must not forget the body. The body is the chalice of the soul. Trauma, betrayal, and injustice are not only psychological, they are embodied. Your clenched jaw, your tight chest, your shallow breath, these are your soul's messengers. Listen to them, move with them, cry, shout, dance, walk into the forest and let the trees bear witness to your becoming. The psyche is not healed in abstraction. It is healed in embodiment. In moments of despair, you may wonder, is there any hope? And I say to you, yes, but not the false hope of avoidance. Not the hope that things will always go your way. Real hope is grounded. It says, even if life betrays me again, I will not abandon myself. Even if others reject me, I will not exile my truth. Even if he fall apart, I will rise with deeper roots. This is the hope of the self It is not based on outcome. It is based on essence. And what is essence? It is the eternal part of you, the flame that no wind can extinguish, the child that still dreams, the elder that still listens, the lover that still believes. Essence cannot be touched by injustice. It is the source of your calm, not because it is strong, but because it is vast. It holds all things, joy and sorrow, fear and courage, death and rebirth. When you rest in essence, you rest in wholeness, and from wholeness, peace emerges. Not a peace that is loud, but a peace that is unshakable, a peace that says, I belong to myself, no matter what the world does to me. A peace that walks into suffering and says, this too is part of me, and I will not abandon it. This is the gift of consciousness. It does not make life easier, but it makes it sacred. When we speak of sacredness, we must remember sacredness is not the property of temples alone. It is not reserved for high towers or holy scripts. Sacredness arises wherever the inner world meets the outer. With reverence, even in suffering, especially in suffering, we are close to the divine because suffering cracks the surface of our illusions and brings us to the very threshold of soul. The calm that you seek is not passive, it is active. It is forged through conscious descent into the unconscious. It requires you to sit not above your pain, but beside it, to offer hospitality to your sorrow. You must become a host to all that has been cast out, not a judge. And this is the paradox of calm. It does not come from pushing away disturbance. It comes from embracing it with such fullness that it no longer defines you. What the modern world calls unfairness, the psyche often experiences as initiation. The soul is not interested in fairness, it is interested in growth. It draws to itself precise events, relationships, losses and ruptures that will open the gates of the unconscious and draw out what is dormant. Your deepest strength often comes disguised as your deepest grief. But if you flee the pain, you flee the transformation. And so the question becomes not, why did this happen to me, but who am I being asked to become because of this? That is a sacred question. That is the question that activates the self. That mysterious center of the psyche, which holds the blueprint of your wholeness, it is the self that orchestrates the synchronicities, the dreams, the subtle signs that call you inward. It is the self that guides you through the symbolic death of your old identity and into the rebirth of something far more authentic. You may notice that the world often rewards the shallow mask more than the deep soul. This is the tragedy of modernity. It idolizes surfaces, but the soul is not interested in what is rewarded. It is interested in what is real, and the soul will allow everything to fall away, your status, your persona, for your pleasing tendencies, if that is what it takes to restore you to truth. If you are calm in a world that demands reaction, you will feel out of place. You will seem strange. Others will ask why you do not scream, why you do not seek revenge, why you are not frantically trying to fix, to prove, to correct, and you will say nothing. Not because you are weak, but because you are anchored elsewhere in a dimension the world has forgotten. You are not numbing, you are perceiving from the archetypal plane where things move slowly and meaningfully and symbolically. In that state, you can begin to witness the drama of the world without being absorbed by it. Not because you do not care, but because you care from a deeper place. You begin to see others not as enemies, but as unconscious actors playing out the pain they have not faced. You begin to see how the one who hurt you was also once hurt. You begin to see how your own reactions are not always righteous, but sometimes inherited, ancestral, or compensatory. This is what it means to live in symbolic consciousness. You do not justify what is unjust. You do not tolerate abuse, but you see through it. You see its roots. You speak with a voice of both fire and compassion. You say, this ends here, not just for my sake, but for the sake of all those who came before me, who could not speak, and all those who come after me, who deserve a different legacy. To hold this kind of awareness is to become a vessel for integration, for repair, for remembrance. Calm then becomes not a personal strategy, but a collective offering. When you become calm, you create a space where others can descend into themselves. You become a lighthouse, not by shouting direction, but by standing still in your truth. But beware, this stillness will agitate those who are not yet ready to face themselves. Your calm will trigger their chaos. Your silence will reflect their inner noise. Your refusal to be pulled into unconscious games will appear as arrogance to those still living in projection. This is the cost of awakening. You will lose your place in the tribe of reaction, but you will find your home in the realm of essence. The realm of essence is where symbols speak louder than words, where a dream can shape your entire day, where a single feather on your path can remind you of a grandmother's prayer, where the tremble in your chest is not a weakness, but a compass. You must become attuned again to this language of subtle knowing. You must reclaim what the rational mind dismissed as childish, mystical, feminine, or foolish. I have seen patients heal not through explanation, but through image. One woman, after years of therapy, finally dreamed of a lion lying calmly in her lap. When she awoke, she said, I no longer fear my anger. That is healing. Not because we talked her out of her rage, but because her soul found a way to speak through the symbol. And she listened. Do you see now, calm does not come from argument. It comes from alignment. When your conscious mind and unconscious soul are no longer at war, you become serene, not because life is perfect, but because you are integrated. That is the true task of depth psychology. Not to fix you, but to introduce you to yourself, your real self, your symbolic self, your undivided self. There is no shortcut, no five-step method, no universal mantra, because each soul is unique. Each path is archetypally distinct. The betrayal that broke you may be the very portal that births your inner healer. The injustice that enraged you may be the very call that awakens your inner warrior. The silence you endured may be the womb of your inner sage. And so I ask you, who are you becoming because of what you endured? If you do not ask this question, you will remain a character in a script someone else wrote. You will react over and over to the same themes with different actors. But if you ask it, the roles dissolve, the masks drop, and what remains is not a perfected person, but a whole one who can say, yes, I have suffered, yes, I have raged, yes, I have felt forgotten, and still I am here. Still I am listening, still I am willing to be transformed. This willingness is the doorway, and once you cross it, the world does not get easier, it gets more real. But you are no longer seeking ease, you are seeking essence. Essence can hold all things. It can hold your childhood and your aging, your fear and your wisdom, your hope and your grief, your mistakes and your miracles. It can hold them, not to resolve them, but to include them. For nothing can be calm unless it is included. All that you repress will rise like ghosts, but all that you include will become part of your temple. And so we return to the question, how do you stay calm when life is unfair? You descend into symbol, into shadow, into soul. You listen not to the noise of the world, but to the whisper of the inner one. You give the wound its voice, you give the exile its home, you give the chaos its meaning, and you wait not with impatience, but with reverence for the alchemy to begin. You begin to dream again, and you pay attention. You begin to feel again, and you do not judge it. You begin to remember again, and you do not look away. And slowly, the unfairness of life becomes the forge of depth, the crucible of soul, the womb of awakening. This is not theory. This is living mystery. You are not here to escape life's injustice. You are here to meet it with so much awareness that it no longer dominates your psyche. You are not here to become untouchable. You are here to become true. And truth, when lived fully, is always calm, because it no longer needs the world to behave. It no longer requires perfection. It is rooted in something deeper than fairness, deeper even than reason. It is rooted in wholeness, and wholeness does not tremble. What remains then when the world fails to apologize? When justice does not arrive at your doorstep, when those who have wronged you continue unpunished, unaware, unrepentant, what remains is what has always been waiting to be born, your inner authority, your connection to a truth, no court, no system, no person can give or take. The calm you seek is the inheritance of the soul that remembers, I am not here to be spared from the fire. I am here to become fire. You see, life is not a promise of fairness. It is an invitation to transformation. The soul incarnates not to be protected from pain, but to be shaped by it into something real. Authenticity is not forged in praise. It is carved out of conflict. The diamond is not formed in soft soil. And calm is not inherited. It is earned, not through struggle alone, but through the meaning we draw from it. So what do we do with our resentment, our grief, our hunger for justice? That never comes. We must allow them to become teachers. Grief shows us what we love. Resentment shows us where we gave our power away. Rage shows us what we no longer wish to tolerate. These are not enemies. These are not flaws. These are guides, feral, primal, holy. They arise when we are on the edge of a psychic shift, but they cannot lead us to peace unless we sit with them. Let us not be too quick to transcend. Let us not medicate our way out of every emotion that disturbs our surface. Let us not bypass what aches in us by coating it in false light. The calm that rises from true shadow work is not quiet because it avoids noise. It is quiet because it has integrated it. Like the mountain that stands unmoved, though the winds scream, the calm person is not untouched, but is rooted in depth. You cannot fake this calm. It is not a mask. The world has enough masks. What it needs is embodied presence. Human beings who have walked through their own darkness and returned bearing light. Not the light that blinds, but the light that warms, that steadies, that says, I have been to the underworld and I no longer fear it. So I can sit with your pain without trying to fix it. And that is the greatest gift you can offer to another in this life. Presence without control, compassion without fear, love without attachment to outcome. But you must first offer this to yourself. You must learn to sit with yourself in silence, not to correct yourself, but to hear yourself, to become intimate with the contours of your own psyche, to know the places that still tremble and the places that have gone numb, to touch the wounds that no one ever witnessed, not to repair them, but to acknowledge them. For acknowledgement is what the inner child has always longed for, not a solution. A witness in those moments, you become your own healer, not because you fix the past, but because you stop abandoning it. You become the inner parent, the sage, the guardian of your own story. You say to the frightened child inside you, I see you, I will not rush you. I will not shame you. You belong, and something softens. Something ancient exhales. And from that space, calm rises. Not like a concept, but like a knowing. And when you return to the world, you are no longer reactive, not because you are superior, but because you are resourced. You do not need every situation to make sense. You do not need every person to be fair. You do not need every encounter to feed your ego. You move differently, not faster, but deeper, and the world begins to feel like dream symbols in motion. Each interaction becomes a reflection, a mirror, a reminder. You walk into a conflict and see the shadow dancing in both parties. You hear criticism and ask what archetype is being threatened within you. You feel the rise of fear and wonder what memory it belongs to. You witness betrayal and see it as the return of an old story that longs to be rewritten. You do not bypass the pain, but you read it like a sacred text. This is what it means to live from the symbolic mind. And this is where calm is born, not from answers, but from awareness. Do you remember the story of Inanna's descent into the underworld? She was a goddess of light, of fertility, of power, and yet she had to descend, to remove each garment, to face the queen of the dead, to die, symbolically, before she could rise again with wisdom. That is your story. You must descend into the layers of your psyche, shedding each mask, until you reach the still point, the raw essence of being. And when you rise, you do not return to who you were. You return as someone who knows and that knowing is calm, that knowing does not need to argue, it does not need to win. It simply sees the wounded child in the aggressor. It sees the lonely heart beneath the arrogance. It sees the generational trauma behind the cruelty. And it does not excuse, but it understands. And through understanding, it liberates. So do not fear your own descent. Do not fear your own breaking. That which breaks was never the whole of you. Let it fall. Let it burn. Let it crack open. For what remains when all else is stripped away is what was eternal from the beginning. And that essence, pure, unguarded, divine, is what gives you the power to meet injustice without being reduced by it. You are not here to escape the human condition. You are here to embody the sacred within it. And that begins not by changing the world, but by changing your relationship to it, not by controlling events, but by transforming the meaning they hold within you, not by avoiding pain, but by becoming its interpreter. So I leave you now, not with a solution, but with an opening, an invitation. The next time you are wronged, pause. The next time life betrays you, breathe. The next time the chaos tempts you to lash out, dissent, listen, not to the outer noise, but to the inner voice. Ask, what story am I being asked to rewrite? What part of me is longing to return? What archetype is rising from the deep? Do not rush to fix. Do not flee to numbness. Do not seek revenge. Just be with what is and let the image rise. A wolf, a broken chalice, a crying child, a forest in fog, a cracked mirror, a feather in fire. Whatever it is, follow it. It is your soul, speaking in the only language it knows, and if you trust it, if you welcome it, if you allow it to unfold without forcing it to be pleasant, you will find calm, not because life becomes fair, but because you become whole. And wholeness is calm. Now go, not to analyze what I have said, but to feel where it echoes in your body. Go and sit in stillness, not to escape the world, but to return to it from a place of depth. Let the dreams come. Let the memories return. Let the symbols speak. Do not ask for clarity too soon. Do not ask for justice too quickly. Ask instead to see. Ask to feel. Ask to be initiated, not by perfection, but by presence. This is the true path. This is the sacred work. This is how you stay calm, no matter how unfair life feels. Because now, you are no longer at the mercy of the world. You are in communion with the self, and the self is vast. The self is ancient. The self is you unforgotten. Unschaken and awake